They are in the midst of destroying the very planet that we live on, and we don't have time to waste fighting about DEI right now. So get serious, get involved, or get out of our way.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Just to wrap it up, as maybe, you know, I don't know, I was going to say that this may be a lighter note to end on because it's just so stupid, but also it's kind of a dark note because you alluded to some of the propaganda that's been going around around the situation, and that's the attempt to shoehorn the kind of anti-DEI stuff into this Baltimore bridge collapse, just like they have been around the stuff with Boeing and you know, every time now that you see a story about corporate malfeasance and, you know, the destruction of the regulatory state that results in totally preventable disasters and accidents and deaths and injuries, there's some crazy conservative commentator coming out and saying, well, that's what happens when you hire black people. And it's astounding that they're able to just come out and say that. I mean, the mayor of Baltimore, and I don't know how you feel about the mayor of Baltimore. I have no idea anything about him, and you know, because of I know how you feel about politicians generally. I'm sure probably you're not a fan. I don't know, but he came out and did a press conference, and there were people on Twitter talking about this is Baltimore's DEI mayor. He's like, they're just saying the N-word. That's just what DEI means now. And then Charlie Kirk has been doing this thing about, oh, well, you know, I'm not saying it was DEI, but I'm just saying it's important that we get rid of DEI as I'm talking about this. Dave Rubin did the same thing, reacting by reminding us that we need to, quote, hire the best people to build our stuff. And that once you allow wokeness in, bad things happen. And it's just astounding their willingness to shoehorn this stuff in where it clearly reveals their bigotry. And so, yeah, I'm just interested in how you've been taking in the reactions like that as you've seen this unfold.
Oh, you saved this one for the last question. I'm about to yell for another hour. I mean, but real quick, before I get there, I just want to say before I go on this rant to anyone out there listening, because I know, you know, we got a lot of union brothers and sisters listening to this great show. Please support the Valley Labor Report. We need shows like this, right? Because you guys are not unconnected from what we're talking about here, right? It's because like the contracting and subcontracting relationship and the way that profit-seeking businesses and sleazy contractors exploit that is the exact same reason we find brown children working in Hyundai parts distributors over there in Alabama, or cleaning bone saws in meatpacking plants in the Midwest, or working in slave conditions in farms and picking the tomatoes for our Wendy's cheeseburgers in places like Florida, right? So this connects all of us. And if you are in a union, right, you need to do what Laborers Local 79, a construction union in New York, is doing, not seeing like their fellow workers, immigrant workers, returning citizens from prison, right? Undocumented people, the people that non-union contractors target and exploit the most, they are not, quote unquote, taking your jobs. Again, they're like the men on these bridges. They're like people working around you so often. They're trying to make a life for themselves. They're living in the shadows, and they are being exploited and abused because they do not have the full legal right to representation. They do not have a union contract. They need your help. They are not your enemy. That is what Laborers Local 79 has realized, and that's why they are working to organize those folks. They are reaching out to them. They helped start a COVID relief fund for undocumented people who couldn't get benefits from the state, right? Because if you organize them, you take the bosses like leverage out of their hand, where they always have like a cheaper form of labor. You guys were just on the Great Mansa Musa show, rattling the bars here at the Real News Network, talking about how the fact that corporations, private and government agencies are exploiting slave prison labor to undercut costs. They're doing that that to all of us. Like, if you're a working person, like, these companies, these corporations, and even our own government, they are the ones who are creating this multi-tier labor system where you have like prison slave labor at the bottom, you know, like undocumented, under the table labor, you know, like just above that, you know, intern labor. I mean, they've created so many layers of labor that create resentment within our own ranks, that make us see each other as the enemy. Like, that's how they're winning, guys. So please don't take the bait. Please see this in the larger picture. And also, if you are listening to this and you want to get involved in the coalition that is growing out of East Palestine, and you want to join the campaign to pressure President Biden to invoke the Stafford Act, issue a federal disaster declaration for East Palestine, because that's the kind of thing that presidents do when, you know, when there are hurricanes. Governor Wes Moore just declared an emergency here because of the bridge collapse, right? You unlock a lot of resources, federal and state, that people in East Palestine desperately need right now. And in fact, Governor Mike DeWine has finally, you know, like last year, like sent a request to President Biden to issue a disaster declaration, and Biden won't do it. So like it's only going to happen if like a rank and file movement of people, union, non-union, environmental groups, everything else, pressure him and like join this call to say, invoke the Stafford Act, declare EP a disaster, get these people health care. And I suspect one of the main reasons Biden won't do that is because if he does, then there are going to be a whole lot of communities around the country that are like, hey, we're in the same boat. You know, I mentioned Piketon, Ohio, where the nuclear plant is. They should get like, I mean, like they have like a different situation, but like there are communities like that that still need help. People are still dying of cancers and weird ailments. Like, that's what we're fighting for in East Palestine. Now to quickly jump to the morons and cowards who are out here like spinning their BS conspiracy theories amidst this tragedy here in Baltimore. I mean, I went on Breaking Points yesterday to make this point. I said it on Democracy Now! Like, stop being a coward. If you like, we're not going to reach those morons like Charlie Kirk. They are disinformation and division merchants. That is the whole point of what they do, right? So like, I'm not hoping to reach them. I'm hoping to reach the fellow workers who are being poisoned by that crap, right? And the people who, you know, like are, again, being led by their most cowardly impulses to, you know, like fabricate these ridiculous explanations when the reality is much more horrifying and it's staring you right in the face. We can confront that together. We don't need to shy away from it. We don't need to come up with these, you know, like ridiculous boogeymen to try to explain what should be patently obvious, which is, again, the regulatory capture, the corporate capture of our entire system, the speed ups, the relentless thirst for profit, the stripping away of safety and maintenance, the devaluation of labor and life. Like, all of this is creating the conditions where things like the Baltimore Bridge collapsing and the East Palestine derailment are going to be happening a lot more. That is the problem. But what I would just say, as someone who grew up conservative, as someone who used to think like people like Charlie Kirk think, I used to buy into that. If I had not gone the way that I have to end up being the lefty nut job I am today, I would probably be out there saying the same things right now. I have like right-wing Latinos yelling at me for quote unquote pushing a narrative this week. And I'm like, bro, I used to think like you. Your mentality is nothing new to me. I hope you see the light someday. But like, you know, a lot of people are too far gone into that thing. But what I would just say as someone who has made that journey from conservative, deep red conservative to deep red lefty over the course of my life, is that when I see that, what I see is that they are playing you. Republicans, the right, have been the ones since I was born pushing for all this deregulation, all this disinvestment, all of this like, oh, we gotta like, you know, let corporations serve their shareholders and not the public, because then like, you know, the invisible hand of the market will bring us prosperity. We got to keep cutting the taxes of the rich and the wealthy. We got to keep stripping away these regulations. Like, we got to keep disciplining labor and breaking unions. And now that same right is trying to turn around 40 years later here and say like, oh, diversity is the problem, DEI is the problem, immigrants are the problem. Fuck you. Like, I grew up listening to your lies. I grew up believing the crap that you were pushing. And now you all on the right, especially people like Charlie Kirk, and even people like, people I work with. Like, I mean, like, I'm not even going to call out more names. Like, again, I went on Breaking Points yesterday. I mentioned Sagar by name. I want to have a conversation. I'm not saying Sagar is Charlie Kirk, but like, there's a whole right-wing discourse machine here that is contributing to this crap. And it is not going to help working people. And I believe, and I think it's patently obvious, having seen, having grown up in this world and this ideology, that the right is just trying to cover its ass. The right is trying to distract us from the fact that they have helped create, and in fact, they have been the driving force creating the conditions that are leading to our communities being in this dire state over 40 years. They don't want you to know that. They want you to think that they're the populace on our side and that the problem is DEI. That's not the problem. DEI for corporations like this, it's just another money-making scheme. That's why corporations lean into DEI so hard, because it's a way to pretend like they're doing something to satiate, calls for diversity. It's a low-lift, low-budget investment that can make companies seem more woke, more conscientious, but it really doesn't require them at all to change their business or their labor practices in the least, right? They can keep doing what they're doing while pretending that, they're more conscientious employers. That's why so many companies just lean into the DEI stuff, because they take very little risk in doing so. So what you're actually mad at is not the diversity. You're mad again at the corporate oligarchs who are playing you and playing us and trying to cover their own ass for what they have done to our country for 40 plus, 100 plus, 200 plus years. So eventually we got to wise up to this. Otherwise, they're going to destroy everything we hold dear. They are in the midst of destroying the very planet that we live on. And we don't have time to waste fighting about DEI right now. So get serious, get involved, or get out of our way.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Exactly.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Yeah. Yeah. You were talking about, this has been going on for 10, 20, 30, 100, 200 years. You might even say something like the history of all hitherto existing society is the history of class struggles. But
you might.
Maybe
you could say that.
You might would say that. Max Alvarez, really appreciate it. Always great. People should subscribe and read the Real News Network, listen to the Working People podcast, watch The Art of Class War on Breaking Points. Max, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, brothers. Always a pleasure. Love and solidarity from Baltimore.
All right. See you next time. So there you go. Always great hearing from Max. He's doing the Lord's work over there in Baltimore, and like he was saying, there's nobody else that's doing the kind of reporting that he is. So that they are over at the Real News. So support them if you can.
Yeah, I think it's so important that we lift up media that is doing a good job, because the media landscape is so atrocious out there. There's so much propaganda. The right-wing discourse machine that Max was speaking about, but also, the more corporate liberal media,
right.
The MSNBCs and CNNs of the world and New York Times, right? There's all this disinformation. There's all this information that is never reported, stories that are not told, people that are not centered. And so when we have good journalists out there doing good work to really uplift and amplify the voices of working people and the struggles and realities that we really face in this country, in this world, always appreciate that. So yeah, highly recommend. Follow Max's work, follow the Real News Network, and of course other good outlets that are out there. I noticed, the In These Times hoodie on. In These Times is another great outlet doing great work, Labor Notes and others. But there is good media out there if you want to find it.
Yeah.
And that's something that I try to encourage people. You don't just have to pay attention to this garbage, this corporate sponsored garbage, whether it's of the liberal flavor or the, extreme far right flavor. There are alternatives out there. We don't have the resources. We don't have the money. We don't have, the big sponsors, and we never will. Like, that's kind of part of the point, right? Like, we're criticizing them. We're exposing their malfeasance. So of course we're not going to get their support. But you know, I think there's a lot of opportunity to educate our fellow citizens, our brothers and sisters, our neighbors, our friends, our family, our coworkers. You know, turn people on to new media, get them engaged with media that will educate them and really uplift them, and you know, inspire them hopefully to get involved. And I really appreciate Max's call to get involved. You know, people power is our salvation. It is through people power, through solidarity, through collective action that we have a choice and a chance to do better. You know, the only thing that can fight back against organized greed is organized people. That's what it's going to take. And we as working class people are the majority. We have more in common with each other, despite all of these differences. Some are real, some are not. But we have much more in common. We have to unite around these common interests because we all want a better life for ourselves, our community, our families, right? And so the more we come together, the more we build relationships, the more we strengthen our networks and our coalitions, the more we fight for one another and show up for one another. You know, this fight for these brothers and sisters in Baltimore and East Palestine, because we'll be next, right? Yeah. And your community could be next, right? So it's important to show up for one another, to fight for one another, and have each other's back.
Yeah, exactly. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.